Hi Brollies, Marvin here from TechBroll.com, where we do unboxings, reviews, and sexy B-rolls. And today, finally, we're taking a look at the new and improved ASUS TUF Gaming VG27AQL1A monitor. I know that's a mouthful, but this is a gaming monitor that features everything the old TUF VG27AQ has, including the unique and special ELMB-Sync feature, but with a bunch of other upgrades such as improved design, higher refresh rate, higher brightness levels with VESA HD400 certification, and most importantly, it now has a better 130% sRGB color accuracy. In this video, we'll focus on its gaming and productivity performance and its overall value. With that being said, let's get into it. Alright guys, in typical ASUS TUF gaming fashion, the packaging of the ASUS TUF Gaming VG27AQL1A is pretty much identical to its predecessor. So we have an image preview of the product here, and as you can already tell, it now features a different design for the stand. At this side of the box, we have all its key features that we're going to break down in this video, but again, the significant improvements here are the 170Hz refresh rate, HD400 certification, and the 130% sRGB coverage. At the back, pretty much the same details, and on this side, we have the specific model name VG27AQL1A, the serial number, and other technical details. So, let's see what comes in the package. I'm actually pretty excited about this because if you've been following me for a while, you know that I'm gonna use this as my new main monitor and my old VG27AQ as my second monitor for streaming. So, inside the box, we have a DisplayPort cable to achieve that 170Hz refresh rate, an HDMI cable for those who don't have a DisplayPort on their host device, a USB 3.0 cable because yeah, I almost forgot, this new monitor now has a couple of USB 3.0 pass-through. Aside from that, of course, we have the power cable, the power adapter, the usual ASUS VIP member notice, and the user guide right here. And for the main package contents, we have the new redesigned V-shaped base with a combination of solid metal and plastic cover, and of course, like its predecessor, it can also be attached to the monitor without needing any tools, which I'll show you in a minute. Alright, so as expected, the bar support comes pre-attached with the monitor itself, and that actually helps for pulling the panel out of the box easier. And like I said earlier, attaching the base to the support bar is quite easy. All you have to do is line it up properly and secure it like so. If you want to make sure, then you can use a Phillips screwdriver to lock it in place. And that's about it for the unboxing experience. Now let's do a parts overview first before we head into the more technical parts of this review. The dimensions of the ASUS TUF VG27AQL1A without the stand are 615 by 367 by 51mm, and with the stand, of course, the height is variable, which I will just overlay on the screen. Now, as you can see, the bezels are relatively thin even on the chin, but later we'll see the actual borders when the screen is on, but yeah, the bezels, at least for the panel support, are thin. As for the branding here in front, of course, we gotta have that ASUS logo at the center. And again, the base is now V-shaped, but we'll talk more about that later. Now, in terms of the adjustment options, you can push it downwards as far as here, and you can push it upwards quite substantial up to this level. In terms of tilt, you can tilt it up to -5 degrees and up to 20 degrees. Not a lot, but it should be sufficient enough in my opinion. You can also pivot it up to 90 degrees for that portrait orientation and swivel it up to 20 degrees on both sides, and this is actually the only downside of this new base compared to the old one, which you can swivel up to 90 degrees on both sides. Now personally, I don't think that should be an issue as you can just easily rotate the base itself if necessary. Overall, in terms of the adjustment options, you still have plenty of room to work with, and I feel like the new design for the stand is a step forward to a modern look with this V-shaped design partnered with this sort of Gundam-like polygonal shapes. I don't know guys, it just reminds me of Gundam's V-shaped antenna, right? Now, one good feature of this new support bar V-shaped stand design is the subtle yet effective cable management cover right here. It doesn't quite look like a cover, but it definitely does the job done. Lastly, here in front, before we take a look at the rest of the backside, the panel itself has this nice anti-glare finish, and I also remember that the bottom chin is entirely different from its predecessor. Now, moving towards the side, we have some handy legends here for the OSD controls, and looking all over at the back, we can see here the beauty of this stealth fighter inspired design, and it is completely different from its predecessor, though both of them resembles the typical gamery aesthetics. So right here on the top side, we have some ridges, and I believe this part right here is a little exhaust, but I'm not actually 100% sure about that because it is kinda hard to see, but most of the ventilations are located at the bottom. So we don't have ventilation here on both sides unlike other ASUS monitors that I've tried before, but don't worry about that. As per my testing, it is not an issue with this monitor at all. Now aside from the ventilation and gamery design, we also have an ASUS logo here at the center, an ASUS TUF logo here at the top of the support bar, and a TUF gaming logo here at the backside. We also have a VG27 branding here on the left side, the 4-way joystick for navigation that also doubles as a button, and the 4 dedicated clicky and tactile buttons for the OSD controls. Underneath here, we have the IOs and the speakers, which I will show you in a second. But right here near the support bar, we have the 4 screws for the 100 by 100mm VESA mounting support. And lastly, before we take a look at the IOs, we have the Kensington lock slot right here. Now, in terms of the IOs, first of all, I really like that we have some icons here so that we can easily determine where the specific ports are located. Speaking of ports, we have 2 HDMI 2.0 ports, 1 DisplayPort 1.2, a headphone jack, a USB 3.0 port for the pass-through cable, and the 2 USB 3.0 ports that are actually quite handy, as I explain more later. Aside from that, we also have stereo speakers here at the bottom. And that's about it for the parts overview. Overall, in terms of the design extraction, it is pretty much aligned with any ASUS monitors that I've tried before. The design is pretty decent with good build construction and a ton of adjustment options. The welcome addition here is the modern V-shaped stand and the additional USB 3.0 ports. Alright guys, with all the external details out of the way, let's talk about the key features and display quality of the ASUS TUF Gaming VG27AQL1A. And before we dig in deep in terms of technical details such as refresh rate, response time, ghosting, ELMB-Sync and all that, let's talk about the display quality first as an appetizer to get you guys excited, alright? So for starters, the VG27AQL1A features a 27 inches 1440p resolution IPS panel with HDR400 certification, meaning it can reach up to 400 nits of brightness, and it also has a contrast ratio of 1000 to 1. In comparison, the old VG27AQ only has 350 nits of brightness, probably not that significant of a difference, but a difference nonetheless. Now, its predecessor, the ASUS TUF Gaming VG27AQ, as per my testing, also has 100% sRGB coverage, but the rest of the color space is not that impressive as you can see here compared to what the new VG27AQL1A has to offer. Aside from featuring a 130% sRGB color accuracy, and by the way, please don't get confused by that, 130% simply means that it offers more colors, especially in relation to other color spaces as you can see here. The VG27AQL1A has 85% NTSC coverage, pretty good 89% Adobe RGB, and an impressive 94% P3 color gamut, especially at this price point. Essentially, this means that this monitor is highly capable for the usual content creation, especially for social media posting, and is also quite decent, though not perfect, for print and other media applications. Color calibration is also quite good out of the box as you can see on these before and after calibration samples. Aside from having a good color accuracy, with an IPS panel, of course, viewing angles are pretty decent as you can see here. Even on an extreme angle like this, you can still appreciate the colors and the details without much color shifting. Contrast and sharpness are also on point, at least for what my naked eyes are capable of seeing, and with a 1440p resolution and 27 inches of screen real estate, the image quality is really good with crispy details and vibrant colors. Now, as for dark spots on a white background, it is pretty much non-existent on any angle as you can see here, which is quite expected for an IPS panel. Backlight bleeding is also quite minimal on all angles, both with lighting and without lights around the environment. Reading text are also pretty decent. The letters and characters are quite sharp and readable, even while scrolling without any color shifting that you would otherwise encounter on a TN panel. So as you can already tell, media consumption on this monitor is pretty good. You can definitely appreciate the image quality of what you are watching. The stereo speakers on the other hand, while usable, is not very good to be honest, but I think that is more of a bonus than an actual feature. Alright guys, now that we know how good the panel of the VG27AQL1 is for productivity, let's discuss its capability for gaming with its 170Hz high refresh rate panel, 1 millisecond MPRT, and 4 millisecond GTG response times, and of course, the unique ELMB-Sync feature. I'll try my best to explain it as simple as possible, so let's get into it. Alright, so two of the most important features that you need to look after for a gaming monitor are high refresh rate and fast response times. And in the case of the ASUS TUF Gaming VG27AQL1A, you've got 170Hz refresh rate and 1 millisecond MPRT response time also known as moving picture response time. But in order to take advantage of that 1 ms MPRT response time, you'll have to enable the ELMB feature, also known as extreme low motion blur, and it has its pros and cons, which we'll discuss more in depth later. But as a default, you'll get the 4 millisecond GTG or gray to gray response time, which is still pretty decent. Now, high refresh rate and fast response times work hand in hand in providing the smoothest gameplay experience possible by minimizing ghosting and smearing. Essentially, the higher the refresh rate is and the faster the response time of a monitor, the less motion blur and ghosting you'll encounter. And as you can see on this comparison, jumping from 15 FPS to 170 FPS is night and day. And for a more realistic comparison, looking between 60 FPS and 170 FPS, the distance is quite significant. And like I always say, you really have to try it first for you to understand, because sometimes people say that they're fine with a 60Hz panel until they finally try something like a 144Hz and up. And after that, you really can't go back to 60Hz. It just doesn't feel right anymore, especially for FPS games. Now let's move on to the trickiest part of our review, which is response time, ghosting, and ELMB-Sync. Now, full disclosure guys, take everything on this testing with a grain of salt, as it is really hard to show on camera the result because it may differ from what you may actually see real time using your naked eyes, especially with the ELMB feature due to its backlight strobing nature. Alright, so let's start with ghosting, or the image trail that you see when an image is moving across the screen. And like I said earlier, the higher the refresh rate, the less ghosting you will encounter, as you can see on this 120Hz versus 170Hz comparison. Now, fast response time also helps to minimize ghosting, and like I said earlier, as a default, you'll get the 4 millisecond of gray to gray response time, which means the amount of time a pixel changes its color. The faster it changes, the less trail you will see on the screen. And to be able to get the advertised 1 millisecond MPRT response time, you'll need to enable ELMB. Now, to properly capture ghosting with or without ELMB, I had to match my camera's frame rate and the monitor's frame rate. So I had to lower the refresh rate of the monitor to the highest frame rate my camera is capable of capturing, which is 120 FPS. And even with that, it is still hard for me to actually determine which is better, as you can see on these examples. Let me know in the comments below what you think is better, but here's the actual caveat guys. ELMB on itself has its pros and cons. The advantage of using this is of course getting that fast 1 millisecond MPRT response time. However, the downside is, since the backlight is strobing, brightness levels are significantly lower than usual. And with these test results, I can definitely say that, at least for what I can see and experience, even without using ELMB, ghosting is pretty much minimal with the ASUS TUF Gaming VG27AQL1A. Now for kicks and giggles, I also tried capturing the test with the maximum 170Hz, and since my camera can't keep up with it, you see this disturbing fast strobing effect. But like I said, even without ELMB, there's not much significant ghosting with this monitor. Do note though, for those who are wondering, you won't see this backlight strobing effect in real life. Lastly, should you decide to use ELMB, don't worry, as you can enable it alongside G-Sync, which is a feature that eliminates screen tearing. With other monitors out in the market, enabling ELMB or backlight strobing with G-Sync is not possible, making this monitor alongside other ASUS TUF VG monitors quite unique. Overall, based on these testings, I'll probably use this monitor without enabling ELMB for better screen brightness. Alright guys, before we finish this video, I'll show you the OSD settings real quick for those of you who are interested. In terms of the OSD settings, the first button is the power button. The second one is for game visual. The third is for the game plus, where you have the crosshair, timer, FPS counter, display adjustment, and sniper feature. And the fourth button is for exit. Now we also have the 4-way joystick that also doubles as a button that when you press will show the entire OSD menu. Here we have the key features like overclocking, which at default set at 144Hz and can be overclocked to 170Hz. We also have here the overdrive, also known as ASUS Trace Free, which as expected is set to 60. We also have here the adaptive sync option, ELMB-Sync, and other patented ASUS monitor features. Aside from that, of course, we have the basic settings like brightness, contrast, color temp, and others. So as you can see, like I always say, the OSD settings are pretty standard and intuitive across different monitors of ASUS from different price points. So to conclude, the ASUS VG27AQL1A proved to be a worthy successor to the popular VG27AQ and brings a ton of upgrades and additional features, especially in terms of color accuracy, overall image quality, and of course, the design, not to mention the nifty additional USB ports that I find really handy for peripherals. However, if you ask me, is the additional 5Hz a significant upgrade? Probably not, but the color accuracy and better design are definitely worth it. And if you're going to upgrade from something like a 60Hz or even a 144Hz monitor or a monitor with a TN or VA panel, I think it's worth considering, especially for its price in relation to everything it can offer to the table. And in my opinion, you can never go wrong with the ASUS VG27AQL1A. And there you have it guys, thank you for watching. Huge thanks to ASUS for sending this in. You can get this from the links below. Thank you for watching, subscribe if you like this, and see you next time. Have a great day guys, you're awesome.